All right, then. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Everybody Talks. This is very, very exciting. And we're going to have a panel discussion today on body image issues. And I think it's a very relevant topic, something that affects us every day, right? How many of us can actually say that we felt confident about our bodies just like today, just this morning? If we can have everybody drop their favorite emoji in the chat, how many of you actually felt insecure about being in your own skin just today, just this morning, just so we can get an idea of how grave an issue this is? Yeah, we're already getting those in. So yeah, I mean, this is just proof, right, that we need this more than ever, because for years I feel like our culture idealizes this sort of an ideal body, right? And usually this just reaches out to some sort of an attainable standard, and that just sort of makes us feel inadequate, sad about the way that we see our bodies, and that's what body image is about. But of course, to elaborate a little more on that and to really understand why we feel this deep sort of dissatisfaction with our bodies, we've got a team of highly experienced panelists consisting of psychologists and psychotherapists and counselors, who are here to talk to us and answer our questions. So thank you so much, all the panelists, for being here. We really have need this, because we have so many questions and we need clarity on all of these subjects. And so we've gathered here today, and we would really love to have your opinion and your thoughts about this particular subject. So before we dive into the questions, let's have like a quick round of introduction with all the panelists. Kankana, would you like to tell us a little more about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Ananya. Hi, everyone. I'm Kankana. So I have done my MPhil from NIMHANS, which is in Bangalore. And since then, I have been in another tertiary care setup, which is in Assam. Following that, it's been 4 years that I have been practicing in Manipal. This is sort of a unique setup in the terms that we have come up with a psychotherapeutic center which is exclusively dedicated for the students of the University of Manipal. So we do a lot of work with young adults in college setup. And yeah, so now it's been 4 years, and all total I've been practicing for almost 8 years now. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Kankana. Definitely very impressive. And we're really happy to have someone with so much experience and such incredible credentials here with us. And we also have Yashvi Manani here. And Yashvi, it's really a pleasure to have you. Would you like to tell us a little more about yourself as well?
Hello, everyone, and I'm glad to be here. And I'm Yashvi Manani, and I have completed my master's with clinical specialization in psychology. And in my therapeutic process, I usually go for an eclectic approach currently, and I'm also undergoing training in dialectical behavioral therapy from University of Toronto. So in my therapy, I do try to inculcate few skills and modules of the same. I had a prior training in counseling setting for 3 months, and then I started my own practice along with the training. And yeah, I am really excited to be here with all of you and to put my views forward on body image and positive body self-talk.
Thank you so much, Yashvi. It's a pleasure to have you here, Sucheta. Would you like to go next?
Sure. Firstly, thank you all for giving me an opportunity to be here and also to learn from so many other experts in the field. My name is Sucheta. I've been working as a psychologist for about 3+ years. I finished my master's in clinical psychology from Pune University. Currently, I'm working as a freelance psychologist. I have my own company called Cope Culture, where we do mental health-based events. I've worked in like an NGO setup for about 3+ years as well. So I love working with kids. Having suffered from an eating disorder myself, body positivity is something that is very, very, very important to me and very personal to me as well. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sucheta. And it's definitely really nice to see you again. We've had a session previously with Sucheta on social media, and it's been really lovely. And it's really nice to see that you're doing very exciting things and that you're part of this conference with us. All right. Next, we also have Yamanee with us. Yamanee, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, first of all, hi everyone. Hi folks. It is amazing to be around such eminent people who are contributing to our community way more than I can even imagine. Okay, a little bit about me. My name is Yamanee Gururani. I go by the pronouns of she and her. I have been working as a counseling psychologist and I have completed my master's in clinical psychology from University of Delhi, North Campus. I work with adolescents and young adults and helping them to be the best version of themselves. So I believe that being here in this talk is one step forward to help the community understand how important your body is and how you can be the best version of yourself. So yeah, very happy to be here.
That's so sweet, Yamanee. Thank you so much for saying that. And yeah, finally, we've got Shafir on the panel as well. Shafir, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Ananya. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a very beautiful initiative. I really appreciate all your efforts. So myself, Shafir, I've been working in Manipal University in the Student Support Center for the last 4.5 years. After my MPhil, this is my first job, and I really enjoy working with adolescents and young adults. And the topic which we are discussing today is very much related to this particular population, and I'm very happy to share my experiences and learn from all of you. So I think we can all discuss further in the coming hours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was perfectly well put, Shafir. And definitely, I think this generation in particular, being affected by the pandemic, spending an overt amount of time on social media and being subjected to all of these images and just, phenomenons that sort of make us feel like our bodies aren't good enough is really something that I feel needs to be addressed and something that will be very valuable for our audience today. So let's dive into the questions and really dig deep into this. And we've actually got Rohini Sinha from our team taking up the first subject that we'd like to talk about, which is, what is body image? So Rohini, take it away.
Thank you so much, Ananya. So hello, everybody. It's an honor and it's my first time here as a panelist. So I do have questions. So before I dive into the questions, I was researching about body image. Even I do have experience about it. Me being a person who is built up being a little bit like a mannish, like, not being like thin or fat, just a person who is not that fat, but yeah, kind of. So yeah, people do have, it's a very trendy topic, plus people do have self doubts like me as well. Like we have doubts about, like, people have commented me like, रोहिणी इतना फैट क्यों लग रही है, या रोहिणी इतना थिन क्यों लग रही है, फोटोज में तो वैसे नहीं लग रहा है. So I always feel that doubt ki, okay, am I like that or am I not like that? So it's just the thing that I have overthinking and everything. I have thoughts. I still do have those overthinking and everything. So yeah, I have question to Kankana about your thoughts on what is body image and how it is developed.
Thanks, Rohini, for opening up for the house and allowing me to join in. So, like the term itself, right? Image is there, and I think a lot of it is a very visual representation of how we perceive ourselves,
Yeah.
along with how we think that others are perceiving ourselves. But I think there are some other components as well. It's not just like I think that we can break it down into 4 categories, like our thoughts about our body, our perception about our body, the way we feel about our body, and of course the behavioral outcomes of the above 3. So I think a lot of things, there's an intersection of a lot of factors that goes into play of how we develop the concept of our body, right? Like I mentioned, it's maybe contributed in the way that we grew up in the family, in the environment that we were born in, the cultural factors, the institutions that we are part of, the information that we consume. And I think at the end of it, the idea that we have about ourselves in terms of our body ends up becoming the concept of our body image.
Yeah, I mean, we do have those thoughts all the time, and it depends upon the environment, as you said. Like, like in my environment, I don't know, in my school days, people used to call me those kind of fat, not fat, like you don't look the way you look in photos. So I used to get those thoughts, okay, I don't look in those photos, so do I look this? I don't look the same or something. Anyways, so anybody else who has the same question, like the same question goes to other panelists as well. Anyone?
Would anyone like to add anything about their opinions on body image?
Can I go?
Yes, please.
Sure,
yes.
sure.
Yeah, thank you. So the term body image itself defines as it's an inner image, like inner perception of how do we look, and it has very little to do with how we actually look. So there itself is a like a discrepancy that we perceive ourselves that we look like this, but maybe we are actually not looking like that. So from there itself, the conflict starts.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of techniques, therapeutic techniques, which actually use as to challenge this conflict itself, like body estimation technique, which actually allow the participants to measure their body and see for themselves that this is how you actually measure. And there has been enormous studies which says that this measuring technique itself has been so insightful for them because they thought that uh, they weigh or they measure more than this. So the body image, the concept of the body image itself talks about a lot of distorted perception. Now, when we talk about how do we acquire this, a lot of studies says that adverse childhood experience can have a lot of effect on this. We call ACE, adverse childhood experiences. To the extreme of sexual abuse and physical abuse can also have an impact. But even with the slightest of bullying or teasing, which happens all the time in schools, have a lot of effect on body image, right? Like we usually hear this from students, and now we are having this conversation and this discussion now, when all of our participants are adults. But it's very disappointing to see that most of our schools doesn't do a lot about it because the schools or childhood are the very important age or population where this actually originates, and most of the schools doesn't do a lot about this, right? So this adverse childhood experiences, even like an accident, and we have an accident and there has been some disfigurement, or there is a slightest scar because of this accident, can also contribute to body image issues in the future, right? So a lot of these factors, and also social learning theory, which is also something comes under the psychologist, a psychological factor. Social learning theory, like vicarious learning, like we see others, like a lot of attractive people getting a lot of appreciations, a lot of people who are fit and athletes, the celebrities, all people are getting a lot of appreciations and acceptance, can also contribute to our own perceptions about ourselves, like how my body is and how I wanted to become like that. So all these factors can also contribute to body image concerns or body image disorders in the future.
Okay. I mean, yes, like I agree with you, obviously, because in school, obviously, I got such comments and then it stuck in our mind for the future basis, like right now also. Like, yeah, I am like this, I'm like that. I do agree with it. So, yeah, I have another question for you. I mean, to Kangna, that, in recent studies, like how Sir said, like Shafi Sir said about like we are dissatisfied about a body, and in school days we always think about it and then it's stuck in our mind about it and overthinking. So why is it so difficult to like our body? I guess in the emojis we do find it not that happy, but yeah.
Yeah, Rohini, before I answer this question directly, I think I want to go back to your opening statements also, like how two very essential core thing came up is one, you are saying that the way that the pictures are there for you and the way that you see yourself in those pictures are two very different things. And that kind of brings up this, one, of course, we talk about our cultural phenomena a lot, but something that is to be addressed also is how neuropsychologically speaking also there's a lot going on within which is hidden in terms of our brain functioning in the way that those processing information can also get distorted. So that's one feature. The other thing is, now this is the cultural thing, like this is the collectivistic feature that you mentioned, that it's so normal. It was such a normal part of your life to hear a lot of comments about your body, and it's not even something that is questioned. I think it's kind of the way that people grow up socializing with each other, commenting on each other's physical appearance and things like that, and it's normalized. And I think that's the reason why you are today overthinking and continuing to think about your relationship with your body and how you feel about yourself. Now, coming to the second thing that you were saying, right? Like how what contributes to overthinking? I think there's a lot of things. Like you said, our socialization, is family also contributing to it? I think, especially in an Indian culture, talking about body and how one appears is such an ingrained, integrated feature, right? Parents are always concerned: are we eating too much? Are we eating too less? Are we stepping out of the house and playing or not playing, and things like that? Not just that, I think we can't, uh, especially with the pandemic setting up in the last 2 years almost, right? And the screen time that has increased, the social media, the content that we consume, I think the information that is coming our way is leading to some sort of a sensory adaptation, in the sense that we are becoming more and more used to a certain kind of information coming our way. When we open up Instagram, we see a certain kind of body being on a certain kind of bodies being on display. Either they're too athletic or they're too slim, too fit. We are consuming a lot of movies, we are consuming a lot of shows where there is not enough body diversity. We end up seeing like the same kind of features being shown to us over and over again. So it makes us feel like as if that is the reality. And when we don't fit that reality, it kind of brings up a distorted idea that I need to change because I'm not seeming to be fitting what is being shown on the screen. And in fact, like even right now, right? Like even though we are all together in this thing, we are just looking at our own self also. It's just, you just can't escape the thing that is staring back at you.
Actually, I was looking at myself for some time. That was true. And yeah, you got me.
No, it's all of us, I guess.
Yeah, actually, we always like try to doubt ourselves, like, are we looking good? Are we looking fat? We see the perfect angle. We try to tell people ki mujhe moti mat dikha, I don't want to show the double chin. And then we start shouting, especially to our parents, ki what sort of photos that you're clicking. I don't want to show that fat. Please tilt the photo and I want to look thin. Go look down, look up. Everything is there because whatever the picture shows on social media, we think that okay, we want to look the same thing that they are showing us. So yeah, that overthinking comes, as you said. So I'm going to hand over to Pavni, the next one, about beauty and fashion of body image.
Yeah,
So
thank you,
Pavni,
Rohini.
thank you.
Yeah. So I have noticed that when it comes to, say, fashion and cosmetics in the beauty industry, there are, for example, a lot of, say, makeup tips for contouring the face and the nose, where exactly to apply makeup to make your nose have the perfect shape and your face look slimmer. And so these features, it's basically, it shows an illusion. And when people apply makeup very often, and maybe some people may never leave the house without makeup, and so when this happens, then when they see their face without makeup, they might sometimes feel that their face without makeup is not good enough. The natural features are not good enough. And this really takes a toll on their mental health. And even the beauty industry, it exploits people's insecurities to sell its products. For example, fairness creams for dark skin, or lots of products to remove body hair on women. So these features are considered unnatural. This is what I've observed. So my question for Yamanee is, how do enhancements like makeup or cosmetic of surgeries or expensive designer clothes change our body image and self-worth?
Right. So when you look at body image, we are looking, as you just mentioned, we I mean, I really love how the other two really talked about body image, but what I understand is that throughout history, we are given importance to beauty in terms of what we look in the mirror, right? And when you're looking in the mirror, it's nothing but what is expected out of us, what our reality is. So I believe that how you portray yourself really matters at the end of the day. And I love how Miss Kangana talked about this entire idea of distortion of reality. What we are really looking in every single day on social media, it's being absolutely distorted, right? And what it leads to is, at the end of the day, is comparison, and that comparison is nothing but a thief of joy. It is generally just this fast track of unhappiness, or it's this recipe of misery, right? And when you look into this, it's nothing but really leading us to this path of insecurities, stemming from a stage of, why am I not looking like that? So all these you can say social media tricks, or even marketing towards, like you mentioned, fairness creams or body hair removal and whatnot, is nothing but distorting this reality that we do feel is being distorted. They're just adding on to it, right? And this sense of insecurity is nothing but is the situation where we need to really look into. This is where we really need to understand, where is this insecurity stemming from, or why in the first place this sense of insecurity, or even this act of comparison is coming. Now, a few examples can be like, it's already been discussed, but you talk about some experiences where you've been scrutinized for your body, like Rohini mentioned, people telling you, to aisi moti kyun lagti hai, why are you looking like this when you don't look like this in images, right? So maybe there have been experiences like that. Or there can be also you observing other sized or different looking individuals being appreciated for the way they look. Set of people who don't really match the way your features are, how you physically look, right? As well as, adding to this, there are also very often people with different set of beliefs or experiences that only add on to why they look this way and why they are accepted and appreciated and not us, right? And they can also be reasons around we experiencing discomfort in the way we feel in our body. Maybe it can be due to I think Shafisa did mention, talking about an accident. If someone has experienced that, or a disease, or a deformity, it just makes you feel uncomfortable, and eventually you don't have that kind of representation. So I feel that is where all of this insecurity and sense of comparison tends to stem in. And that is where we need to establish a causality. We need to understand why this insecurity is stemming in, right? We need to understand, why are they really selling us these products, or these marketing gimmicks are really happening in the first place? And I think causality helps you to reflect on what is really, really problematic and how you can really correct it.
Yeah, of course, I completely agree. It's really important to look through the distortion of reality and realize that there are other people with natural features, because you don't see them being represented a lot. Yeah. Do any other panelists have any comments to make on this topic?
I would also like to add that when we are talking about beauty and when we are talking about beauty products, I think it's also a choice. And not everyone is trying to, hide something or hide some sort of insecurity, because I've seen people out there who, and obviously we are talking about body image and the distortion of reality at one point, but we're also talking about beauty as a choice. And few people just like to present themselves in a particular way, just like to present themselves in a very perfect manner, in a very aesthetic manner. So I think there's also another side to beauty, that it's also something that's more internal. It's also something, an internal choice, that okay, this is how I want to present myself. So that's also where beauty comes in, as to it being a choice.
I'd like to step in here. So Yashi, I agree with you. There is another aspect to this, which is what makes this so complex, right? This is the debate that people use fashion and makeup as a form of expression. Like now it's come to a point where makeup is considered art. So if you're doing your contour really well, you're considered to be, a really skilled person, which is all fair and valid. People have different forms of expression. Art does become an extension of your identity at times, but the problem is that there is another horde of people that are looking at these people and thinking, hey, this is not just a great contour. That's how my cheeks are supposed to look. Coming to a point where they'd feel insecure and they'd wish to change their bodies in more permanent ways. So where do we find that line? Like, how do we draw the line between maybe I am doing makeup to express myself, but how do I know if this is really self-expression or if I feel obligated to wax my arms every month? Like, how do I know if this is something that I've been conditioned to do, or if it's me expressing myself? Because that grows toxic very quickly. That's something that, especially in young girls, and young in children in general, it grows toxic very, very quickly. So what do you think about that line between expression and covering up your insecurities? For both of you,
Right.
Yamanee and Yashvi, whoever would like to respond.
Right. Uh, so I'll just answer first, and maybe Amin can also join in. So I think the line over here would be, when you talk about toxicity, is your preoccupation with it, right? How much are you preoccupied with your image, how you look, how you present yourself? When it's about an extension of your identity, it just comes naturally. It's inculcated in a part of your routine. It's just inculcated naturally in it. But when you're talking about toxicity, it's more of, you're preoccupied with it. You are, questioning each moment, questioning each appearance of yours, right? And that's where you draw the line. That's where you draw the line, in the sense that if it's affecting your functioning, when you talk about toxicity, it also at times affects your functioning, that, and it affects all areas of life, not just about how you present yourself, but the preoccupation is to such an extent that it's affecting other areas of your life as well. And that's where it's toxic. That's where, it hampers your self-esteem, it hampers your confidence. And that's where you draw the line, whether you're enjoying it or whether it's sort of an added pressure to just present yourself in a particular way, just because it's out there.
Thank you, Ashi. That's actually a very handy marker to use, since it's very quantifiable. Yami, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, definitely. I do agree with Yashvi. It's majorly how you establish things are not going in the right direction, or how things are being toxic, or really instilling this sense of negative emotion in you is via emotions. So having always a sense of reflection on how you feel while doing something is very important. So I guess we mentioned, like, being are you being too preoccupied? Is it really hampering your everyday functioning? Is it hampering your cognitive functioning? All of it really is, at the end of the day, helping us to understand whether a particular thing that you're doing, like whether this is actually facilitating your self-expression, and is it adding on to the fun part of things, or is it really just adding on to the misery of how you feel? So I think emotions, it's very important to accept what you're feeling, to reflect on it. And I think that is one way it can always help us to understand how we're feeling about a particular situation. And the moment it is an emotion that doesn't make you feel good, it's negative, or it's giving you extreme sadness, or it's getting you frustrated about who you are, that's when you know that you need to make a change and let go of what you really, what kind of behavior are you indulging in.
I actually had one question. So usually there's a lot of peer pressure also in this. Like, if somebody else is doing it, you also want to do it. So what do you think about it? Like, especially in teenage or school children or even college students, they want to do it because this, friends are doing it. Inside, they might not be willing to do it, but yeah, because of the peer pressure, that if I don't look a certain way, if I don't put a certain makeup, people wouldn't really talk to me or something like that. So what do you guys think about that?
Okay, is it okay if I go first? All right, is that okay? Works? Okay. So what I believe in when you're talking about peer pressure, that's another idea altogether. But what I do understand is that that's where awareness is important. That's where such conversations are important, and I do believe that once now why this entire peer pressure really happens, right? Because again, it's about these images that are presented outside. It's the kind of conversations we keep having there. It's not that younger kids or even kids of 10 or 11-year-olds are not being scrutinized for how they look. They are. There might be गली की आंटियां telling them, बेटा तुम ज्यादा खाने लग गई हो, बेटा तुम कम खा रही हो या खा रहा हो, या बेटा तुम खेलने नहीं जाते हो क्या, all those stereotypes are bashed in. They're just there in the conversation. So obviously it's this tendency of listening to all of that and adding on to the peer pressure of your friends, or the kind of community you're a part of. And I think that's where awareness is very important. And nowadays, even kids have a lot of access to social media, a lot of access to what kind of conversations are happening. That's where I think we need to analyze how we are using social media, and how we can actually create this community. And there are already a lot of people, a lot of influencers who are in this wild storm about having this conversation about accepting your body, about every kind of body is acceptable. And it's what is more important is to bring those people forward, to have those communities move forward and be shining bright, so that even these kids who have that kind of access outside, even what they are noticing, that inclusivity is a real thing, and that's what should be accepted in this entire society that we live in. So I think awareness is very important, and the more conversations we have and the more cooler we make it for those kids in that kind of generation, it's definitely going to help them to grow up into these very confident people who love who they are, and who accept how they look and how they feel.
Yamanee, if I may add to what you were saying, I'm in full agreement to what you were saying, and even Yashvi. So it's I feel like one thing that we kind of also need to bring into the conversation is how we also need to consider the systems that we operate in, and it's not just the responsibility of the individual themselves to educate themselves or bring up awareness and to start looking at media consumption more critically and things like that. But we also need to address how our systems can also be failing us often. And like you said, the neighbors ki auntie, and who will educate them about, because they can't be held accountable or responsible in that manner, because that might have been their reality, and that's the kind of experiences that they grew up in. And to bring this idea about that, let's have a talk about body positivity, are they also will that conversation itself seem entirely alien to them? So in that sense, how do we hold the systems also accountable? Like our educational institutions is so focused on academic performances, there's barely any conversation going on about mental health or extracurricular activities or the growth of the individual, or what other components could be contributing to the development of the individual per se. And so that's the thing, right? I mean, we do need to start questioning these systems as well moving forward at some point.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for giving such informative opinions and drawing the line between dysfunctional behaviors and self-expression. And yeah, wonderful discussion. Thank you. So I'll be handing over the discussion to Akshata now.
Hi, everyone. One of our panelists previously mentioned that Indian households play a very critical role in the way we form our body image. And as part of that, we are exposed to body shaming at a very early age by our own families and relatives within our homes. So, Suchita, I'd like to ask you that around what time do we become impressionable enough to start forming a body image? And how does the environment and the culture that we are around, our cultural identity, mold the same?
Thank you so much for your question, Akshita. I think culture and our family background, our school, our environment plays a huge, huge role in the way we view ourselves and the way we view our bodies. I think at the age group of like 11 or 12 is when you start becoming more conscious about your body, boys and girls both, because you see a lot of physical changes happening, you see a lot of emotional changes happening in your body, and you're trying to kind of make more sense of it in relation with yourself and the world as well. So what happens a lot of times, what I've seen with a lot of clients and what I've noticed in myself as well, the kind of negative beliefs that we hold about our body, we are not born with them, of course, right? It's something that we pick up on the way. It's something that we've heard from our families. It's something that we heard, while we're growing up. So one thing that really helps is kind of sitting down with yourself, reflecting and identifying that where did this idea about my body come from. A lot of times, for example, in the cases that I've seen, and in my case itself, your family members are conscious of certain parts about their body or a certain size of their body. So that's something that you grow up listening to, right? My leg looks a certain way, my backside looks a certain way, I'm too tall, I'm too short, my body is shaped a certain way. So you kind of absorb these kind of comments and they start becoming beliefs that you start holding very strongly about yourself. So culture, environment plays a huge role. But at the age of 11 or 12, I think it's very important to teach kids that the negative beliefs that you've learned and that you believe about yourself, is it coming from yourself or is it coming from the environment around you? If it's coming from the environment around you and it's not helping you in a positive way, or it's not helping you feel good about yourself, how can we change these beliefs and how can we work towards beliefs of feeling better about our body? So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. So, you also mentioned how like a lot of criticism is from the family, right? And there's always a banter about casual shaming that is unfortunately a part of the Indian household. And even bullying and body shaming among children is dismissed as playfulness, and it starts at the time when we are in school, and it goes on through college and for a lot of people even beyond that. So I'd like to ask you that what can a modern Indian parent or educator do to break that chain so that it doesn't continue? And Sucheta, and also if any of the other panelists would like to chime in.
So, Sucheta, before you answer this, I'd just like to add to this question. The essence of this is that growing up, I never remember anyone reprimanding anyone for calling anyone else fat. Like when we were kids and we were playing around, or we were like, "Oh, tu kala hai, or ye hai, or wo hai." No parent ever stepped in and said, "Hey, this is not the right way to go about it." So the problem isn't that we don't know that someone feels bad. Of course, everyone knows that you feel bad when someone makes fun of you or when you're being ridiculed. The problem is we don't take it seriously. Why don't we take it seriously? Why doesn't it affect us as a culture if we are hurting people's feelings? And that's something that's woven into our culture. This casual ridicule is kind of woven into the Indian culture and in most communities, especially coming from the older members of the family, say, uh, you know, 2 generations up and so on. And so what do you think is an actual realistic solution? I mean, naturally people have hardened views about things, and a lot of it is dismissed as, a who cares, it's just a joke, this is playful, this is not serious. So how do you think we can realistically educate someone who has hardened beliefs, or kind of at least draw boundaries such that it affects us less?
I'd love to go first. So I think with the whole idea of like culture in India is a lot about tough love. Making fun of somebody is kind of making them. Certain comments about your body is said in a way that, oh, it's something that you're going to face for the rest of your life, so might as well hear it from home and be okay about it. So I think to educate parents or kids about these concepts, one of the most important things is teaching people that you are so much more than the way your body looks, or so much your identity is connected to so much more than the color of your skin or the size of your body, right? When we focus on our body being just our physical appearance, we lose out on a lot of things, right? We forget that our body is also something that gets us through a really, really tough day. It's something that faces injuries, that faces and, fights off illnesses as well. So we kind of forget that our body is so much more than physical appearance. So starting from the basic that, your identity isn't entirely connected to the way you look. There's certain skills that you have, certain talents that you have, certain parts of your personality. There's so much more of you that is more than your physical appearance. So when you teach kids that, I think that really, really helps. With families, of course, it's going to take a long time to educate parents on what is the right way to parent, and how to draw the line between tough love and actually being a bully to your own kid and the kids in the playground as well, right? So it's going to take time, but I think currently there's a huge change in terms of a lot of parents are coming out and being very open about, hey, listen, I don't understand what's working with my kid. They're meeting therapists, they're meeting psychologists, they're meeting counselors, they're talking to teachers about what is the right way to parent. So I think we still have a very, very long way to go, but I think in the last couple of years there's been a lot of change. So yeah, I'm hoping the change continues.
I would like to add to that. And Sucheta did say it really well, did put it out really well. And I think Shafi sir also mentioned earlier about observation learning. And while as a parent, we are like, if we're talking about parenting and if we are talking about family environment, I think observation learning definitely plays an important role as to how we are presenting ourselves and how parents are presenting themselves as a role model to their child, right? And over here, it's also about, as all of us are talking about, being realistic. So since the start, putting these realistic pictures out there and not just seeing the beauty of it, and even when it comes to social media, even when it comes to celebrities, I think more there are also few celebrities who are coming up and talking about what goes behind the scenes, right? It's not just what is outwardly there, and a lot of them are opening up about it. So just putting this realistic picture onto the child from the start, that while they're also looking at the on-screen part of it, telling them also about what goes off screen, and just being realistic from the start with them, be it by your own self or be it also as to what they're looking out there. So I think social media and these celebrities, they also play a major role in, since that's a very strong anchor through which we pick up these body image issues and through which we pick up this ideal body style. They can also play a major role in reverting it to, in the sense to make it more positive by sharing real experiences, by putting reality out there.
Thank you for those inputs, guys. This was really enlightening. We do have a long way to go, but it's good to know and it's good to hear that you feel like change is on the way. So there's hope for young parents, and hopefully the next generation has, just fewer mental breakdowns along the way. So next we have Vishaka. Vishaka, take it away. You're muted, Vishaka. Vishaka, we can't hear you. You're on mute. Perils of the
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, go on, yes.
Yeah. So actually, I wanted to ask questions regarding eating disorders. Like many people, they don't know that they're going through. So what exactly is the science behind eating disorders? What does it actually mean to have a healthy relationship with your food? Like food is very important. So I wanted to ask Yashvi that.
Right. Thank you for the question, Vishaka. And as you mentioned, how do we know as to, and while we are talking about eating disorders or disorders of any sort, right? And anything, uh, as all of us are psychologists over here, and we do know the three things that go in a disorder, right? It's something that, first of all, as I mentioned, it hampers your functioning and it hampers different areas of your life. So that's one thing. It's dysfunctional in the sense that it's dysfunctional in the sense that it's causing harm not just to your own self but also to people around you. So these are few, and again, the third is the cultural acceptance, and we already have been talking a lot about culture. So these are the three things that go, first of all, in forming a disorder, or when we are saying it as a disorder, and same goes for eating disorder as well, right? So So while we are demarcating, or while we are looking for an eating disorder, how to know that this is what we are going through, are these things, right? If it is hampering your functioning, if it is something that you're preoccupied with, if it is something that it's getting toxic for you, it is not just hampering your own self, but it's also hampering people around you, in the sense that at times it hampers the relationships that you have with other people. At times it hampers your goals in life, the goals that you want to achieve in life, and you are not able to achieve it because you're so into this. And that's where I think also, up till a certain extent, you might be able to take care of it, but after a certain point, professional help is much needed at this point, because understanding the cause of it, as Yamanee also mentioned, causality is very important at such points. So understanding what causes it, because there are n number of factors. There can be environment, there can be culture, there can be own personal experiences. And I would like to give an example over here as to adverse childhood experiences that we talked about earlier. There's this one thing that I read in one of the books, that this girl, she was molested as a child, and growing up, she had put on a lot of weight, and she liked it that way. She liked it that way because she wanted to go invisible. She didn't want the attention from the men because she had been molested as a child. So she just wanted to go invisible for the men, so that she doesn't catch attention of them, right? And that's why she was sort of forming this layer around her. And that is deep. That is trauma that we are talking about over here, right? So there's so many factors that go as to what looks on the surface, even if it's when we are saying eating disorder, but there's so much that goes into it. And to understand the cause of it is where we start with, and taking further steps onto treating it appropriately is how we go about it.
So can you tell us, like, what are the different types of eating disorders? So, sometimes there are times when the person who's going through it
Right.
might not be knowing, like, if he or she has a eating disorder. So what are the factors that help us identify, that we or someone has it?
Right. So when we're talking about eating disorder, I would like to point three common eating disorders that we talk about. First is anorexia nervosa, and first is anorexia nervosa, second is bulimia, and then is binge eating, right? So in anorexia nervosa, it's more about a strict diet. It's about, they are restricting themselves up to a great extent from consuming food, right? So they'll have like short amounts of food, they'll have like very tiny amount of food, and even when they have that, they feel guilty about it. They look at themselves in the mirror and they'll be like, oh, I'm still fat, it's basically starvation. When you talk about anorexia nervosa, it's basically starvation. So that's how you know that, when a person is starving themselves, and when they are already below weight. And it affects so many other factors, in the sense that it affects their menstrual cycle, it affects their whole body system, right? uh, so that's how basically starvation, when it comes to anorexia nervosa, is one of the way in which you can know that it's an eating disorder. Second, when you talk about bulimia, it is about eating and then purging off. It's about vomiting it off, right? So they eat food, they'll hog on to food, but they'll feel so guilty about having that amount of food that they'll uh, indulge into vomiting, like self-induced vomiting. And while they are vomiting, there's a lot of reflux and all of those issues come up along with it, right? So that's again how they are hampering their body in itself. And with both of these, there's always this constant fear and always this constant talk that they are still fat, that they are still not the ideal weight, they're not still the ideal body type, right? That's something that constantly goes on with these two. um, and moving on to the binge eating, that's about having excess amount of food, and having it in multiple intervals, right? Like, suppose if I have food right now, I'll say have food like 5 to 6 times during the day, and I'll have it more than I am actually hungry, right? Or more than my body can take it. So it's like, going excess in all these times, right? So it's about intensity, how frequently you're having it, and it's also about how much you are having it. So these are like the three main eating disorders that we can uh, divide into and observe these changes of. So yeah, so to answer your question.
Yeah, so can you also tell us, like you had mentioned about environmental factors, except for that, are there any other factors that leads to eating disorder?
Yashi, if I might add to that question, so and also for the rest of the panel, so eating disorders there's evidence of eating disorders dating back centuries. So eating disorders have been in play long before we had social media and magazines, and I suppose we always have a perception of beauty. We always have an ideal that we want to reach, but is it just that, or is there something about human beings that wires us to be prone to these illnesses? And along with that, I would also like to add that when we were doing the ground research for this panel, I was really surprised by the numbers that we saw. Like, I was looking at some European nations where they had put out numbers saying, over 1.5% or 2% of their population suffers from eating disorders, which are huge numbers. They're huge numbers. And since this is a relatively mum topic in our country, where nobody ever stops you when you say you want to lose weight, no matter what you look like, nobody ever says that it's a bad thing for you to be doing that. I want to understand from you and your experiences the actual scale of this problem, because I feel like that is not being reflected correctly. I was 23 years old the first time someone came to me and admitted to having an eating disorder. But when I went online and I read through literature, I realized that I must have been surrounded by people who had these insecurities and actual illnesses that were harming them, but I had no way of knowing. So a general view from all of you on that, and yes, we'll start with Yashu first.
Right. Um, when you talk about eating disorders and how it's impacting out there, I think I would like to refrain from answering this question at this point, since in my current practice, I haven't yet come across a client who, or a person who has come up with an eating disorder to me, and that's why I think other more experienced people would be much better to answer this question, and I think I would like to open the floor to them.
Is it okay if I add a few pointers here?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. There are researches dating back in 20s, 30s, 1920s, 1930s, which talk about eating disorders, which talk about people either starving themselves or eating too much. Again, every single community, every single space has a very different story. So there are also researches where a few I think I can't exactly recall which journal did I read it from, but there have been it talked about how Chinese women were forced to look a certain representation, and the kind of things that they did, the kind of practices that they tend to have in order to look the kind of ideal, that kind of ideal body type, or maybe shape of your feet, or shape of your waist, or your entire body. And it same goes for men as well, right? It goes both ways. So these are dated back from then because of this entire knowledge and the community that an individual was being brought up in, right? So as you mentioned, that that is one of the major factors, environmental. Apart from that, I think Yashvi did touch upon different kind of traumas. So trauma trauma has a tendency to define our lives sometimes when it's not treated in the right manner. It has this tendency of overpowering what is really happening in our life, right? So we need to be very conscious that whether there is some deeper issue or not, whether there is any form of trauma which is affecting us biologically, psychologically, or even relating it to more emotional issues. So there are also a lot of factors around the kind of experiences we've had, and as an individual we are nothing but an amalgamation of our emotions, our thoughts, and our past experiences as well as present. So all of these factors also play a super super important role. And it's not just about why we talk about social media the most is because it has had that kind of impact. And looking at so many clients coming up with issues around food, not only just stem from social media, they also stem from the kind of expectations that they themselves have, or certain certain traumas which are not entirely, probably it's not always related to them being talked about their body. It can be any form of trauma, even any form of molestation, some kind of scrutiny, anything which is not, might not be related to their body, but it's affecting them. It's affecting them somewhere biologically. It has, and like neurotransmitters have such a massive role, and we tend to store all of that trauma there. So it's very natural that if that trauma is not discussed, or there's not a lot of conversation around that, if it's not healed, that's what I'm trying to say here, it is definitely going to stem into something, and very often it does lead to eating disorders. And there are plenty types. So I agree with the most common three that we tend to observe the most, but it can stem into really any form of disorder, any kind of abnormality, any kind of deviance, something that is hampering your cognition or even your everyday basic functioning. So yeah, I wanted to add that.
Thanks, Yamanee. Yes, please go ahead, Sucheta. Yes.
So I actually wanted to talk about this one particular movie. So even in popular media, there's not a lot of representation when it comes to Indian women or men having undergone any sort of eating disorders. So if you watch this movie called Dil Dhadakne Do, there's the Shefali Singh. It's kind of shown that she has a form of binge eating disorder. She keeps eating to kind of cope with her negative emotions. So one thing is, there's not a lot of representation on eating disorders. Usually when eating disorders are represented in India, it's mostly something like models having anorexia or maybe bulimia, because they want to get to a certain shape so that their careers progress. We don't see a lot of everyday regular people undergoing there's not enough representation. And actually talking about the percentage of people going through it, even I'm not entirely sure, but I can speak purely from I was working in a school for about 3 years. So I've seen about 400 500 students, like batches, basically students go through their 8th 9th and 10th. So I've seen in about 30 to 40% of students, both female and male students, there was some form of disturbed eating patterns, right? Either consuming huge amounts of food to cope with negative emotions, or completely restricting eating, which could possibly lead to an eating disorder in the coming years, right? So I think in schools, it's a place where these kind of eating disorders and these kind of things start, and we don't really take notice of it, because we just think that, okay, this is a person's appetite, or this is just the way that person is. They either eat too less or too little. We don't see it as warning signs of this child maybe someday developing an eating disorder.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so
Yes, go on,
it
Shraddha, please.
actually answers a lot of our question in eating disorder. So now I'd like to hand it over to Shafir. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Vishaka. So I have noticed that people often go through extreme workouts, like they may go to the gym for multiple hours a day just to achieve that perfect body. Of course, wanting to be fit is a different matter altogether. But when you are working out beyond your physical capabilities, you completely tire yourself out. That is a different matter. And also, there are people all over social media, or maybe even from your family, who all have their different prescribed diets. There are several thousands of these different types of diets to achieve different things to basically get the perfect body. And when people go through all this, they make all that effort and they do not achieve the required results, because obviously everyone's bodies are different and they need the correct amount of nutrition and exercise. So when they overdo it, they may not achieve the right result. So my question for Shafir is, this intense workout and diet culture is a large part of the modern fitness mantra. So what role does fitness play with respect to body image issues?
Thank you, Pranavi. That's a very important question. I will just come back to that question by adding few points about whatever other panelists have discussed here. I was very interestingly listening to all their points, and it was very well thought and put it out. When we come to talk about this whole thing about body, we need to understand how this relationship with our body has been conflicted to this extent. To answer that, we'll have to look at the whole concept of how we started looking at our body as an aesthetic object. Okay, so for us, for all of us, few of you already mentioned that this has been something which we always come across on a day-to-day basis. So you need to understand the extent of how body image issues or body image disorder has been influenced in our body, to the extent of how body image disorder has been normalized for all of us. Like we consider, like we spend a lot of hours on looking at our mirror, and we do a lot of like extreme toxic behaviors, and it is normalized to like very like disapprovingly or disappointingly, very to that extent we have always normalized this thing. And this all comes back to this aspect of body as an aesthetic object. Now when we consider our body as an aesthetic object, every interactions, like our interactions with our peers, our interaction with family members, or our interaction with the group, is considered like a business transaction. So this business transaction means before we meeting somebody, we have to go for this excessive groom, and this excessive grooming is like we are making our aesthetic appearance more attractive. Just like for example, if you have a if you're going to make a like if you're going to bake a cake, and how we want to sell this cake, we would definitely put a lot of aesthetic appearance to that cake, and that's why we want to sell this cake. That's why we need to sell this cake. So to make it more attractive, we add a lot of other things, and that's what this whole thing about makeup and groom. So just like that, before we meet somebody, we need to go for this excessive groom, and every interaction is business transaction. And when I say business transaction, we are so hyper vigilant about the surrounding. We are so excessively preoccupied by how this person is looking at me, and what are the non-verbal cues which makes me feel like this person is not accepting me, or this person is doesn't like me. So this whole thing is about how our body has become an aesthetic object. And now why this body becomes an aesthetic object? And there are historical roots to this. So also mentioned here before that in 1920s, that's when this fashion industry has a course to this. In 1920s, New York Academy of Science has like made a conference to study about the new trends among women, particularly women who was going through this excessive starvation, and they just wanted to be more slim. So there was this slender ideal at that time, and they wanted to be excessively slim, and which also contributed by this fashion industry. Okay, now 1920, after this conference, that's when this new term eating disorder came to the picture, to the clinical picture. Now from that fashion industry, now when you talk about this health, fitness, and other diet industry, this all industries has a lot of role controlling our way of looking ourselves, or the way of how we wanted to present ourselves to another person. Now we have a lot of health fitness app. Now we have this smart watches. What is the smartwatches doing? The smartwatches are excessively monitoring our calorie intake, our exercise, everything. So smartwatches, fitness centers, all these health fitness apps, everything controls how much we should present ourselves to another person. Now, talking about dieting and exercise. So science actually says, or evolutionary science actually says, we are not prone to do a lot of exercise and dieting. And when it comes to dieting, there is this term called weight cycling. So we all must have experienced this, or we must have heard from others, that when somebody goes to excessive dieting, immediately after the dieting, they will gain double weight of that. So this is the term called weight cycling. And why this is happening? Because when we go for dieting, our body interprets this dieting phase as starvation or a famine. Okay, so when we come out of this dieting and when we start eating, our body also interprets that there can be another starvation or a famine in the future. So take as much like or keep as much as calories or store as much as fat in the body, so that next time when the famine happens, we have a lot of resources in the body to deal with that. So our body actually meant to this kind of starvation. It has get used to a lot of starvations and famines in the past, and that's why our body does this to us. Now, when it comes to exercise, there is this anthropologist Daniel Lieberman who has actually written a book on exercise and says that uh, we humans are not evolutionarily programmed to exercise, because in the past we were always active, we were always physically active all the time, because we have been this hunter gatherers all the time, and we have to be physically active to survive. So exercise was a part of our day-to-day routine. Now we are exercising from the very early time. Like my nephew who is around 14, he started going to gym. I was so surprised. Why are you going to gym this early? And you have to understand that why like this fitness and every industries have a lot of control on us, because they are exposed to a lot of fitness rituals and everything at an early age. Now look at Manipal itself. Manipal is predominantly in early adolescent or adult population. How many fitness centers are there in Manipal?
A very disproportionate number. I can attest to that.
Exactly. So that itself says that how much these industries have a control over our body. So I think I have tried to answer your question, and if other people have some inputs, they can add to that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rafir. I think that was a really good point about how there are so many fitness industries, and if only there were as many people coming in for counseling and trying to improve their mental health, just as they're trying to work on their physical health, right? Dr. Sheetal, would you have any follow-up comments on that? Do we have Dr. Sheetal in the...
No, I don't believe so. I don't believe she's on the call.
All right, then let's open it up to the rest of the panel, and yeah, please feel free to step in.
All right, moving on. Vishaka. Vishaka, you're still speaking on mute. Sorry.
So yeah, now I would want to ask about how social media affects in body image. Like how, though we've already discussed some of it, but I want to ask like how as an individual per day we have every day we are consuming social media content, and we want to look a certain way, like how we see some good picture of some girl or a boy, we want to be that person in that shape. How does that affect body image and social media, the relation with it? So I want to ask this to Yamanee.
I'd also like to add before we go into answering this question. So social media is definitely front and center when we're having any discussion about body image in 2022. There is no doubt that it has an impact, and that the impact is, well, not so great so far. I would like everyone's just like a quick take on social media and the general relationship that you have observed it has with people who are students who are kind of growing and still forming their personalities, are not fully formed adults yet. And just a quick tip, anything that has worked for you or anything that you have advised and has worked for anyone else on how to stay sane while staying informed. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to add to this as well, that there's this is one tip I really did decide I'll provide it. I've been doing this with a lot of my clients as well, and I'd love if everyone could work on this. But before that, what you asked, so I think we've already touched upon a lot of concepts around how young minds that are still developing their personality, still developing who they really are and their own perspective. I think we have, touched upon that in terms of awareness, in terms of how their surroundings, how their immediate counterparts, or even how their own family members can, though it's very far fetched, but yeah, I think there is definitely, and I do agree with Sucheta as well that there are nowadays parents like these recent parents have been very accepting of knowing that yes, they don't know what to do in this situation, and they are very very genuinely not trying to ego boost themselves and be like hum handle kar lenge. They're genuinely looking for help, and I think that is also a big eye opener for me, because again, um, seeing this generation doing different from where how we have been brought up, it gives this sense of hope. Adding on to a tip, I do believe that role of social media is crucial, but I also believe in the phenomena that it's very important for us to be mindful of what we consume, right? So we already have plenty number of Instagram pages or Twitter handles and influencers, professionals, who are creating the space for inclusivity and positivity, and they are doing this like tremendously. So what I always have been following since day one of being on Instagram, and lately I've been doing this, like telling this to everyone, is that just go to your explore page, okay? Identify the things that don't set with your values and beliefs and simply remove them. Instagram gives us the power of taking control of what we are consuming. It's not like they will unnecessarily try to bring us things. That's how the algorithm really works. Just go to your explore page and tap on things that don't sit with you, or every time you come around a post of someone you've been following previously or over the years and now you don't remember, but you be conscious of what you're consuming, simply remove that post. Of course, that person might be doing it for their own. Now if you're looking at a model that makes you feel uncomfortable, fine, that model might be doing great in her life, good for her, but guys, let's focus on ourselves. Like, let's make ourselves a priority. Simply remove that post. Don't report it, just remove it from your timeline. And over a period of time, that's what spaces like Instagram do. They will give you the explore page that you want. So I love looking at probably coffee based reels to relax myself, or I look into only food based reels, or probably affirmations, manifestations, day in my life. And that's like my aesthetic, so I only like to watch that. So I've controlled my page like that when every time I do open Instagram or I do open social media, I'm being inspired, or I'm at least feeling relaxed, because I'm not looking at things that I know might make me feel vulnerable. So that's just one tip I'd like to give. That go on your explore page, make it your own. You have that power. I mean, Instagram is giving you that much, right? And same goes with Twitter. Just follow those spaces. Filter out filter out the people, or filter out those certain kind of hashtags that you might be following over a period of time that don't make you feel good. That's absolutely okay. I mean, I think our first priority needs to be ourselves, right? So let's focus on that.
That's actually excellent advice. I mean, when you spoke about inclusivity and positivity on social media, I mean, for me personally, also that has made a world of difference. It allows me to believe that, okay, if I don't like something about my body, it's okay, it's normal. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to go down a spiral. So, yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. And that was actually a very handy tip. Just focus on yourself. Would anyone else like to weigh in with their social media funda while we're on the subject?
I think I'd love to add. I think when we consume, like Yamini so rightly mentioned that with social media you can always choose what content you want to expose yourself to. With that, I'd also like to add, focusing on pages or people who reteach you the whole concept of food and movement and nourishment. Right now, for people who have disordered patterns of eating, or people who don't have such a healthy way of in living their life or their lifestyle, they might view food as maybe something as negative, or an emotionally comforting activity, and they probably don't view food as fuel and nourishment, which is actually important for our body, right? Same goes with exercise. Is kind of viewed as, if I eat too much, this is supposed to be the punishment that I'm going to give my body so as to look a certain way. When you relearn the role of food in your life and the role of movement in your life, there are a lot of pages on Instagram and Facebook and things like that that reteach you that these concepts, and they also teach you a better way of looking at exercise, right? When we often look at working out or exercise, it's often seen as, okay, if I do this particular thing, it's going to make my body look a certain way, right? If I cut down on these particular foods, it's going to make my body look skinnier or feel skinnier. There's not so much focus on, okay, if I exercise or if I have some form of movement, I'm increasing the dopamine levels, or I'm increasing the strength, or I'm increasing the flexibility, or I'm just in general feeling better about myself. Or if I'm eating certain food, it's making my hair better, or it's making me feel better. It's giving me the right amount of calcium or protein or things like that. So when we follow pages that focus on food and exercise as a means of feeling better as opposed to looking a certain way, it can create a huge shift in the way you kind of want to lead your life as well.
Thank you so much for that, Suchita. That was very insightful. So moving on to our last segment, I will hand it over to Akash and Achintya now.
Thank you, Mrigakshi. So that was definitely a very insightful discussion, and I think filtering out a lot of filtering out your social media definitely helps. It's kind of like as it goes with the physical diet, what you consume for your mental diet as well. I think that's quite important, and it is definitely of utmost importance that we definitely do consider and are aware of what we are consuming, right? Speaking of which, I think the body dysmorphia, most of us that we relate to, is the issue that we normally associate with females mostly. Like they are the ones, or the models are the ones who suffer with these. But I would like to know like how body dysmorphia manifests in men, like what kind of eating disorders they go through. Because as a man, and like growing up, most of the first issues that comes with the body image issues with men is when they go and try to approach a girlfriend, or maybe when they are getting bullied in school, or when they're trying to play a sport. So these are the places where they get where they become conscious about their body image or how they go on about in a group. And like when they're on the playing ground, people like the kids, other kids, they'll just start saying, oi chotu, oi patlu, kya kar raha hai aise. And these are the places like there it will manifest. But the thing is also, many of these people, then they'll just go and find their solace in gym. As a sports person, I myself find solace in gym, or like going onto the turf. So but also these issues, they kind of hamper your mental health, and they kind of start taking a toll on your mental health. So I would like to request Shafi to shed some light and share like how these issues manifest with men in particular.
Yeah, thank you, Akash, for that question. There is definitely a distinction between how men and women look at body image. Women, the concept of body image among women has originated a long before than men, who very much obsessive about their appearance. As I was saying before, in 1920s, women started being this slender ideal, and they wanted to excessively lose their weight. But when it comes to men, men started obsessing about their body very significantly in this 21st century. There are a lot of resources on how men started looking at their body image and started spending a lot of time on grooming and other things. There was a book called Adonis Complex, which actually came up in 2000, which talks more about how men also started spending a lot of time on grooming. The difference between men and women looks their this whole body image differently is because women wanted to lose their weight, they wanted to be thin. Men also wanted to lose their weight, but as well as they also wanted to build so much muscles. So this muscle, there is also called this muscle dysmorphia. So this obsession over muscles is very common in men. And if you look at historically, men always portrayed muscular in all the literature. Like you can see Greek, Roman arts, men, the nude men pictures is always portrayed like a very muscular figure, and we have this famous Michelangelo David picture also. It's also portrayed like muscular. So men, like an ideal man, has always been portrayed as muscular, and definitely when our celebrities having six packs and all these things, definitely men should always obsess about their body image being like a more muscular figure. So being more muscular, like having more muscle and like having a broad chest. And recently, there is always there is this trend started obsessing over hair, because men started shedding more hairs very recently, and men with like a bald or losing hair has been always started obsessing over this new trend which also started coming up. So now when we look at men over their body image concern, they wanted to lose their weight, they wanted to build so much muscles, they wanted to have a broad chest, and they also wanted to have a nice hair. So this is how men now look at their body image concern. When we also look at the difference between men and women, how they preoccupy over their body image, woman must be someone who would be excessively concerned about their BMI, but men not, because we see a lot of body builders are either overweight or obese when we look at their BMI, but they still are very happy about their muscular body. So men doesn't always obsess or preoccupy about their BMI, but women are. So these are the very distinct difference which we can see among men and women. If others have anything else, please add.
I would definitely love to add to that point. And I was, as I was researching for this article, I definitely read about muscle dysmorphia, and that's definitely one thing that I have seen in person and with the people in the gym that I work out with. But I would also like, I had a question regarding this. So many people, what they do, if we go on internet and when we talk about men trying to level up their status or like to level up their lives, the first advice that they would get is to go out and hit the gym and get healthy, and which is indeed a very good way to go on about improving your health, or that's a very good point to start, right? So I would like to know, where do we draw the line when working out and looking after yourself, not just for men, even for females and everyone else? So where do we draw the line that when it's healthy to actually go and consider working out, and when it's falling onto the category of body dysmorphia, and we should then maybe approach that problem as such?
Also, if I might add to that, as you mentioned, body image issues manifest themselves very differently in men and women. The problem that has been plaguing a lot of the younger men, the younger boys in our age, is that there is a lack of representation. We always see women being conscious and we find it perfectly acceptable. But when a man does it, he is often picked on by people around him, or he's considered vain. So there is a generation of young men that's growing up to be the kind that would indulge in self-care and such. So what is a good positive message that you would like to give them, to all listeners who are tuned in now and who will be listening to us later? What is something that you would like to tell young men about their well-being and their body image?
I'll jump in here, and I think
Is that a
the
question to
panelists
me?
here.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Shafir. I don't want to take the platform. I don't mean to say it like this, that like I'll say something knowledgeable about men per se, but I think I'm just jumping in to kind of say that the gap when it comes to body dissatisfaction and body image issues, the gap between men and women, young boys and young girls, is definitely decreasing. It's the manifestations could be slightly different, but not so much. I think it's more about the type of body. Like, let's say that the common parameter is the type of body, but the outcome is, okay, women want to be slender, fitter, and men want to be more athletic. more muscular. So, for example, it's so pervasive, and the messages are always so implicitly built and given to us all the time. Like, we love watching superhero movies, right? I mean, can you think of one guy out there who's like looking like my next door neighbor? And no, it's not. And even when you're talking about Spider-Man, uh so we are bringing in the image, we are kind of making it more acceptable that, okay, the shy boy next door, the geek, the like we are just thinking that maybe he's not the overtly muscular type, but he still has a ripped body. What is going on? And I'm like, we're not even questioning these cultural messages that are being given by, the media houses per se, or in the way where the money is, where the profits are, and things like that, right? So yeah, that's what I think. What I would say is that the gap in terms of body dissatisfaction amongst men and women is definitely decreasing. Going back also, right? When I think Akash was asking, like, how do we differentiate when we are actually taking care of our body, when we are going to the gym? It's more about us wanting to take care of ourselves as opposed to us feeling as contributing to the same phenomena of feeling bad about ourselves. I think the idea is this, that are we going to the gym because exercise, I mean, there's no doubt about it that exercise makes us feel good. Uh, the question is, why exactly are we doing that? What is the intention behind it? What is the motivation behind it? Am I exercising because I want to look good, or am I exercising because I want to improve my functionality? Because both of them will have different outcomes. So any kind of body could still be a healthier and fitter body, regardless of how they may look outwardly, as opposed to a certain kind of body which we are only focused on the the aesthetics of it, because then only a very specific parameter would fit that. And so that's the question that we need to keep in mind.
That's a lovely point of view. Shafi or anyone else, would you like to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add a question for Shafir and for the panel at large. So, like Shafir said, a lot of people go bald, and more people are going bald now than they did earlier. But sometimes, like, I have a receding hairline and I am worried about that. But sometimes it feels like the only acknowledgement I get about that is from Dr. Batras when they message me with their ads. And I don't see a lot of representation in like online spaces about body image issues that I might be facing. So, like, how can we go ahead and change that? And do you think that in turn is contributing to men not getting the help that they need because they don't consider it to be a problem?
Definitely, that's a very good question. See, when I was saying that there are a lot of people who are going bald these days, it's not because we see a lot of people going bald only these days. It's also because there is an obsession over hair, and when people go bald, then that's a concern for them. Going back to Agash's question also, this all comes back to how we look at our body. If we want to accept our body and love our body, then we will take care of our body. We will take care of our body in a healthy way. Then we want to be healthy. But when we look at our body as an aesthetic object, as I mentioned before, then we wanted to be more attractive. We wanted to be more appealing. So we will build our muscles. We will put a lot of grooming. We do want to hit gym excessively to make it more appealing. So the way we look at ourselves is the major distinctions that I feel. If we want to compassionately accept and love our body, then we definitely want to be more healthy, and we will definitely take care of our body in a healthier way. Just like how we take care our friends, our loved ones, or our family members. So we all are actually capable to provide that compassion to others, but when it comes to ourselves, we can't do that. We have a lot of conditions, we have a lot of criteria. So if we fulfill those conditions and criteria, then only we will accept and love us. But we don't have those criteria and conditions to our loved ones. So we unconditionally accept our loved ones and other people, but we have a lot of conditions when it comes to ourselves, right? So I think there is the distinction comes from when we wanted to hit a gym just to be more attractive or appealing or to be healthy. So it all comes to the question of how do we want to look at ourselves? How are we accepting ourselves? How are we loving ourselves? Right? So this all come back to the first question about what is acceptance of body, what is loving of our body, and what is this relationship with our body. And coming back to the question of men being bald and what is this representation and everything, it's all again go back to what Kankana was saying about this celebrity obsession. Now, when we talk about social media, I think I have a very different opinion about social media because there is a lot of blame on social media. I do feel social media is just a child. The main parent is definitely our mainstream media, which is the film industry itself, right? Social media still have a lot of control on us, not on us. We have a lot of control over social media. I can just uninstall my Instagram or Facebook, but I don't have any control over how Ranbir Kapoor is going for gym and he's having a six pack, right? So this film industry is representing common men, but I don't understand why all common men have six packs and broad chest, or why this woman having like a very slender ideals. So I do blame on the mainstream media, which is our film industry, than social media a lot, because social media is still a child and we have a control over social media. But this mainstream media, we don't have a control. So I do feel like we should have a lot more discussions and conversation about how this actors and actresses wanted to represent themselves as this ideal figures for everybody.
Thank you so much for that, Shafir. And with that, it brings us to the end of our discussion panel. I'd like to open up the floor for the audience to ask any questions that they'd like to. You can drop them in the chat, or you might unmute yourself and ask. Maybe we'll do another 10 minutes or so for questions, and then we'll close. So yes, I'll give you all a minute to think up any questions or drop them in the chats as you'd like. So while we are talking about social media, I'd actually also like to ask something to the panel in general. So I'd like your opinion on this actually. So I was reading about how the British government has recognized that a lot of their citizens are having body image issues, which is something that is also depicted in their mainstream media, and their mainstream media is depicted very normally for school children to be anorexic or to suffer from extreme societal expectations and have a lot of social pressure around looking a certain way. And recognizing that, they are calling a bill into action that states that all images that are doctored using any form of photo editing or any form of body distortion that are used for commercial purposes have to be marked as edited. That if you're looking at a picture of a celebrity that is selling you, say, a car, you have to tell people that you have airbrushed the celebrity and that you have airbrushed the car, because this is not an accurate representation. So what do you think about this approach, just as a just as a fun discussion? Do you think that this is a step in the right direction? Can it have the kind of impact that we're looking for?
I would like to go first on this. And I think it really is a good step in the sense that as we're talking about reality, putting the real picture out there to people, that this is not what you look in the screen is not what the real picture is. And this is, I think, one step in that same direction to and sort of also balancing the two, right? Sort of also balancing what you're putting it out there, putting it on screen, and also showing them the real picture. So I think it's a great balance between the two, and definitely a step further towards reality. So that's what I would like to say.
Would anyone else like to weigh in? Okay, I see here we have a question in the chat, so we'll just take on this one. We have a question from Vijit, and Vijit says that he's come here today to educate himself about body image, and someone very close to him suffers from body image issues. and he wants to be supportive. So what is the right way for him to be supportive with a person that is suffering from this illness, and how can he be a better friend or a partner? So it's open to the floor. Anyone who'd like to take that?
Hi, Vijit. Thank you so much for your question. I'd love to answer this question actually. If you have a friend or partner who is, having challenging body image issues, I think one of the most important things you can do is educate yourself on it. Understand what their challenges are, how much it affects them on a daily basis. Are there certain supportive statements that you can speak to them on a daily basis? You can be a safe space where they can come to talk about, okay, this is what I'm feeling and this is how it's affecting me. Offering support without any form of judgment is always a way to go when anybody is suffering from any sort of mental health issue or any sort of challenge. So being the safe space, educating yourself on what their challenges are, asking them.
Did we lose Sujita? I believe so.
I just like to add on to it till the
Yes,
time
please.
Sucheta comes back. Yeah, I think one of these features around active listening, to learn to be more accepting of what they are saying, not just to be there sitting idle, because that's also very bothersome. It turns out to be toxic, to be honest. A lot of people do tell you be there or support them, and it all makes a lot of sense. But to be an active listener, to sit there and understand what they are trying to tell you. And I think Cheta did mention about judgment, having no sense of judgment, being very participative in how they're feeling, to actually and yeah, exactly, to educate yourself, to and you can only be an active listener if you know what they're facing. At least you have the basics right. So I think educating yourself and being a very active listener and being very proactive and helping them to get support, I think that's also very important. Very often when we are in a situation, especially in our country, it's not that even as modern as you are, getting into therapy is still a big step. It still has a lot of inhibition. So I feel being very very supportive with your partner and helping them to get the right support, helping them to get into therapy if they can, then that will be a very very important step.
Thank you, Yamanee. I hope that answers your question, Bridget. Do we have Sujita back? I believe not. Okay, so we have one more question in the chat, and then we'll be drawing the session to a close. So Agnivesh asks, what about body modifications and body image issues? And this is also something that comes up a lot in the literature when people talk about changing their bodies in a permanent fashion as they're dissatisfied with it, undergoing cosmetic surgery, or even invasive procedures at time to look a certain way. So what kind of a relationship does that have? Is it a quick fix? Do I say that, okay, I don't like how my face looks, I'm going to go and get different cheeks and I feel better about myself after that? Is that it?
Is it okay if I take this up
Yes,
first?
go ahead, Yami. Yeah.
Okay. So there is a lot of discussion around this, especially I've not had a lot of discussions here in India that I've been able to be a part of, but yes, there are a lot of discussions around, how a lot of celebrities, especially outside, are very open about having get procedures done, probably a nose job or something or the other. Um, it's good that they are opening up about it. It's important, but then again, um, this is again a very personal choice. I believe that if someone feels that they want to get something modified, it's a personal choice. I think Yashvi did discuss this initially. But again, you need to be more reflective. Are you doing this just to look like someone? Is it is it causing you extreme negative emotions? Is it hampering your functioning? Look into those signs. If it's just something that stems from an it's something like a tattoo, right? You want to get a tattoo probably just because you like it, so a lot of people do have this and I think body modification is still a very very relevant yet new topic. because a lot of people do believe that we are confident, we just got it done because we just liked and we wanted to look at ourselves like that. But then again, is it causing negative emotions? Is it instilling this sense of episode of self hatred? So it needs to be addressed, and it needs to have a lot of reflection on why someone needs to get some sort of body modification done in the first place.
Would anyone else like to weigh in on that?
Adding on to what Yamanee said, and something in the similar lines also, that also apart from it, is it adding to your self identity, right? Is it adding to your self identity, all of these factors? If they are in some way adding to your self identity, then that's an issue right there, right? Because then again, we are focusing on the extrinsic factors to validate our own self, and that's somewhere again a negative boundary. That's somewhere a negative feature to it. And yeah, so I just wanted to add the self identity part of it, that if we're attaching meaning towards it in a form of self identity.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Ashri. Thank you everyone for making time to be here today. This has been a wonderful session. Our minds are illuminated and our hearts are full. I hope we get to do a lot of great work together in the coming months and years. And I'm very proud of what each one of us here is representing and the message that we're sending out. Thank you so much for your time and your views on this matter. And thank you for helping out the next generation build body positivity. So with that, I think we'll draw it to a close. Have a nice day, everyone, and see you all soon.